You walk into the meeting with a solution nobody else saw coming. You explain the flaw in the current strategy clearly and precisely. Your analysis is accurate. Your logic is airtight. But what if being right is exactly what makes them uncomfortable? 3 months later, you notice fewer invitations, quieter responses, subtle distance. Guess what happened when you demonstrated clarity they couldn't match? Everyone believes intelligence earns respect and opens social doors automatically. What if I told you that clarity often triggers rejection instead? Most people spend years wondering why competence doesn't translate into belonging. The system doesn't punish intelligence directly. It punishes the disruption that intelligence creates in group dynamics. You're taught that being smart is an advantage in every situation. But what determines social acceptance versus what intelligence actually creates? If perception really elevated status, every sharp thinker would be socially central. Yet many highly intelligent individuals find themselves gradually isolated. How does that happen in environments that claim to value competence? Intelligence doesn't just add capability. It reshapes dynamics entirely. When someone consistently sees patterns faster, articulates ideas more precisely, or detects contradictions others miss, they disrupt rhythm. Groups operate on shared assumptions, shared pace, shared comfort level. Disruption creates tension even when unintentional. If understanding why being perceptive often reduces rather than increases belonging interests you, consider subscribing to Prof. Zhang Explained. This channel examines social dynamics that operate beneath conscious awareness. Share this with someone who notices they're respected but not included. They need to see what their awareness costs socially. The first mechanism is hierarchy disruption. Every group has invisible ranking, not always about titles, usually about perceived competence. When someone consistently demonstrates sharper analysis, they quietly threaten existing order, even without competing, even without seeking leadership. Competence shifts gravity automatically. People instinctively compare. They measure themselves against others constantly. When they encounter someone who processes information faster or sees further ahead, it triggers internal recalculation. Am I as capable? Do I still hold position? That recalculation is uncomfortable. Discomfort converts into subtle distancing. Instead of acknowledging ability openly, groups reduce threat socially. They frame the person as intense, cold, arrogant. These labels function as social equalizers. They shrink perceived threat. Easier to say someone is arrogant than admit you feel challenged intellectually. Intelligent individuals sense this shift without understanding it fully. Conversations change tone. Jokes stop including them. Suggestions receive less enthusiasm, not because they were wrong, because they were right too consistently. Being correct repeatedly doesn't increase belonging, it reduces it. The second mechanism is tempo mismatch. Intelligent people move through ideas quickly. They anticipate outcomes before others finish explaining. They may interrupt not from disrespect, but because conclusion forms early. To others, this feels destabilizing. Social interaction depends on shared tempo. When one person operates at different cognitive speed, it disrupts harmony. The faster thinker feels bored, the slower thinker feels pressured. Neither intends harm, but friction develops. This pace difference creates emotional distance automatically. The intelligent individual may withdraw to avoid frustration. Group interprets withdrawal as superiority. Silence from perceptive person gets interpreted as judgment, even when it's simply observation. If someone speaks less but notices more, others project criticism onto silence. They imagine evaluation constantly. Reality may be just processing, but perception defines social reality. When someone believes they're being evaluated, they become defensive. Defensiveness reshapes relationships permanently. Highly intelligent individuals find themselves in strange position, not attacking anyone, yet treated as if they are. The third mechanism is resistance to group illusion. Every environment maintains shared fictions. We all agree on this. This is how things work. But independent thinkers question these structures, not aggressively, simply logically. When they ask why too many times, question stops being intellectual. It becomes political. Challenging assumptions gets interpreted as challenging authority. Authority rarely responds with warmth. In professional settings, questioners get labeled not team players. In families, they're described as difficult. In social circles, they slowly become peripheral. The group protects its internal story. Intelligence threatens that story by asking whether it's coherent. This creates social tax. The more someone values truth over comfort, the more they choose between authenticity and acceptance. Many intelligent individuals learn to dim analysis, to soften clarity. Even softened, difference remains detectable. There's emotional component too. Highly intelligent individuals struggle with shallow interaction, not from arrogance, from stimulation thresholds. They seek complexity, nuance, depth. Small talk feels draining. When they disengage, others interpret it as superiority. Depth-seeking individuals ask questions that bypass surface comfort. They inquire about motivations, contradictions. For some, this feels refreshing. For others, intrusive. In ecosystems where emotional comfort gets prioritized over exploration, deeper thinker becomes isolated. The isolation is gradual. Fewer messages, fewer invitations, less inclusion in informal spaces. People naturally gravitate toward environments where they feel competent and relaxed. If interacting with someone consistently reminds you of blind spots, you unconsciously avoid them. Avoidance isn't always malicious, but it's real. Another factor is predictability. Intelligent people detect patterns before others do. They anticipate outcomes. They read shifts in tone and power. This foresight creates social imbalance. When someone predicts consequences accurately repeatedly, it shifts how others relate to them. Instead of peer interaction, subtle asymmetry develops. One person sees more. The other senses that sensing. Asymmetry reduces comfort. People prefer relationships that feel balanced. If one individual demonstrates sharper perception consistently, others feel observed rather than connected. Observation, even silent, carries weight. It implies awareness. Awareness reduces space for pretense. Not everyone wants to abandon pretense. Pretense often stabilizes social harmony. The one who sees through it disrupts that harmony, without trying, without speaking, simply by understanding. There's paradox involving confidence. Intelligent individuals aware of abilities may choose restraint. They downplay competence to preserve cohesion. But when they do assert themselves, shift can be dramatic. Sudden clarity, decisive articulation. This contrast unsettles people who categorize them as passive. Unpredictability amplifies tension. Becomes difficult to place them within simple social box. People prefer predictable identities. When someone cannot be easily categorized, they generate cognitive effort. Effort translates into discomfort. Discomfort translates into distance. Over time, this creates recurring pattern. Admired privately, resisted socially, respected for competence, excluded from intimacy. This duality is isolating. It reveals something fundamental. Belonging isn't granted to most capable, it's granted to most compatible. The compatibility mechanism operates invisibly. Groups unconsciously screen for threat level, not physical threat, cognitive threat. When someone consistently demonstrates superior pattern recognition, it triggers defensive response. Not conscious, not deliberate, but consistent. Response manifests as social cooling. Cooling happens through micro-behaviors. Slightly less eye contact, delayed responses to messages, fewer casual invitations, less laughter at comments. These signals accumulate. The intelligent individual begins noticing pattern, but struggles to articulate what changed. This withdrawal protects group comfort. By distancing the person who sees too much, group maintains equilibrium. Members can continue operating at comfortable pace, can maintain familiar narratives without constant questioning. System stabilizes by pushing out destabilizing element. There's also weaponization of sensitivity. When an intelligent person notices exclusion and mentions it, they risk being labeled oversensitive, paranoid. This gaslighting reinforces isolation, makes them question their own perception. The very clarity that triggered exclusion gets used against them. Groups become skilled at denial. We're not excluding you, you're just intense. These framings shift responsibility. Make the intelligent person responsible for group discomfort their awareness creates. The intelligence penalty compounds in specific environments. In workplaces prioritizing harmony over truth, sharp thinkers get sidelined. In families valuing tradition over analysis, questioners get marginalized. In social groups organized around comfort, perceptive individuals get filtered out. Context determines whether intelligence becomes asset or liability. In environments valuing innovation and independent thought, clarity becomes magnetic. In environments organized around familiarity and emotional predictability, it becomes destabilizing. Key difference lies in what group prioritizes. If truth valued over harmony, clarity gets rewarded. If harmony valued over truth, clarity gets moderated. Understanding this distinction reframes rejection. It explains tension, removes illusion that dislike always signals personal failure. Sometimes it signals misalignment, sometimes threat, sometimes difference operating in system not designed to accommodate it. The most unsettling realization may be this. Being perceptive is powerful, but power, even quiet power, changes how people relate to you. Power creates distance whether you want it or not. Power asymmetry makes others uncomfortable. They sense they're being seen more clearly than they see you. That sensing creates vulnerability. Most avoid vulnerability in casual relationships. They prefer equal footing, equal visibility. When someone demonstrates consistently superior perception, equality becomes impossible. Relationship recalibrates around asymmetry. Asymmetry rarely feels intimate. This explains why intelligent people connect better one-on-one than in groups. Individual relationships can navigate asymmetry. Groups cannot. Groups need equilibrium. Person who disrupts equilibrium gets managed out. Not through confrontation, through gradual exclusion. Exclusion feels personal but operates systemically. It's not about you specifically, it's about what your presence does to group dynamics. Your clarity exposes contradictions. Your questions challenge assumptions. Your silence gets interpreted as evaluation. These effects happen regardless of intention. Understanding this removes some sting from rejection. You're not being excluded because something is wrong with you. You're being excluded because something about your cognitive style doesn't fit system requirements. System requires comfort, you produce clarity. These are different functions. Some intelligent individuals adapt by finding compatible environments, seek spaces that value depth over comfort, truth over harmony, analysis over agreement. In these environments, intelligence becomes social asset rather than liability. Others adapt through code switching, learn to modulate perception, to soften clarity, to pace themselves to group tempo. They maintain intelligence but manage its expression. This preserves belonging at cost of authenticity. What cannot be changed is fundamental dynamic. Intelligence creates awareness. Awareness creates distance. Distance creates isolation. Pattern repeats because it reflects deep truth. Groups optimize for cohesion. Intelligence optimizes for accuracy. Different goals create friction. The choice becomes conscious once you see pattern. Continue seeking belonging in environments that penalize your natural cognitive style, or find environments where that style becomes advantage. Neither path is wrong, but pretending you can have both without trade-offs creates unnecessary suffering. Understanding social cost of intelligence doesn't make it disappear, but it reframes experience, converts confusion into clarity, replaces self-blame with systemic understanding. And sometimes understanding alone provides enough relief to make the isolation bearable. There's another dimension, memory. Intelligent people remember details others forget. They recall contradictions, notice when stories conflict. This memory creates uncomfortable accountability. People prefer narrative flexibility. When someone remembers precisely, it constrains revision freedom. They can't reshape history. This constraint feels oppressive. Mere existence of accurate record changes dynamic. Pattern recognition compounds this. Intelligent individuals see connections, detect repeating patterns. This synthesis makes understanding threatening. Patterns reveal systems. When you point out pattern, you're suggesting structure. Structure implies design. This moves conversation to systemic dynamics. Most resist systemic analysis. The penalty shapes trajectory. Intelligent people learn early that full expression creates problems. They learn to hide. This hiding becomes habit. Unexpressed capability creates pressure, leads to frustration. Person knows they operate below potential, but potential triggers rejection, trapped between authenticity and acceptance. Some resolve through isolation. Find fulfillment in work, ideas, solitary pursuits. This path has integrity, requires accepting loneliness. Others compartmentalize, maintain different versions for different contexts. This preserves both. Requires constant code switching, neither perfect. Both involve trade-offs. Trade-off reveals truth. You must choose between being fully yourself and being fully accepted. Integration remains elusive. Environments designed for conformity. Conformity requires similarity. Intelligence creates difference. Difference disrupts conformity. System responds by pushing difference toward margins, not malicious, mechanical. Result is same. Intelligent people end up peripheral not because they're defective, but because they're different in ways challenging system requirements. Understanding mechanism changes internal narrative. Rejection isn't personal judgment, it's systemic response. System needs equilibrium, you disrupt equilibrium. System adjusts by distancing disruptor, happens automatically. Understanding automation removes moral weight, makes rejection less painful, less about worth.